Hello there. So, today I will be talking about James S.A. Corey's Cibola Burn, which is book 4 in the Expanse series. And today I'll be talking about a few things that I've noticed in the book that I really appreciate and love very much. So, let's get straight into it. Now, so far, I'm a slow reader, right? So far, I've only read up to, I think, about 120, up until the 120-ish page. So, about this part. Now, one of, give or take, that might have been 8 to 9 chapters, I believe, but that doesn't matter. See, what really that I want to talk about today is a few things that I really love, right? So that will be in 2 parts. The first will be the characterization of Basia as a character. And number 2, it would be on the subtle world building that the book continues to do. But of course, I'm going to talk about Basia, and this really leads into a few things, because not only is the characterization done well, what that leads into is that not only the character is well fleshed out and you understand it, and despite all the messed up stuff that he does, you will still support him. The second part is how this brings and ties into the larger theme, and it's really something very interesting because of the author. James S.A. Corey, by the way, is the pseudonym of 2 authors who are friends in real life. Because not only are the political views of James S.A. Corey kind of interesting and different, the way that leads them to write the themes and the politics of this book is also shaped heavily by that. And it's really something very interesting to see, because on the surface level, it seemed like it's something that would clash with their own views very much, but I digress. That will be something that I talk about further. So let's get straight into Basia's characterization. So again, if you actually do want to read this, which you probably won't, let's be honest, that doesn't matter. There's your show, by the way. Spoilers ahead. So let's go into it. Basia, I forgot his last name. Basia is a bad dude. This book begins with, the first chapter begins with Basia, and we meet, within the first sentence, we know who he is. He used to be a very peaceful man, but because of his past on what happened with Ganymede and the war between MCRN and the United States and the UN Navy, what happened was his home was taken, his child was taken from him, and he's dead. He turned into a zombie, and he's on the run. He has been a refugee for the past 2 years of his life, and he has just been in this very terrible mental space, and he hates himself for it. What happened was he was unable to provide for his family. He failed his son, and he is, well, emasculated, essentially. Not literally, but his pride and his duty as a man, he is unable to fulfill them, and he feels like a failure because of it. And that is one of his motivations of pursuing the goals that he is. So, some background, right? They are now on a planet called Ilis, after the gate beyond Uranus opened, and they have entered into a new solar system. So, this is the first time that humans have went past the solar system, an actual living human. What happens is, there's politics involved, and Basia is with a bunch of crazy lunatics who are refugees, but without any permission from any governing body. Not from the UN, not from Mars, not from the OPA. They went straight past the gate and right onto a new planet. So this breaks a lot of boundaries, because now the entire solar system is wondering what happens since this is new territory, and if nobody owns it, then can I just explore them? And because of these governing politics behind the show, behind the scenes, this is why there is such large conflict here. And so this book begins with an exploration party, a science team sent by a joint force of Mars, Earth, and the OPA to explore this new planet. So what happens is, well, Basia is already there, and they don't want them to take their own home, because they're afraid they will lose their home again. So this ties into that refugee dynamic that Basia has going on in the back of his head. And so in the first paragraph, now I'm finally getting back into it, right? In the first paragraph, we see that, well, Basia is going to blow up the landing platform that the ship that the exploration team is taking to go down to Ilis is going to be. And yes, so generally speaking, there's a very large... So, sorry, ignore that. So what happens is, in that sentence that he is introduced, there's a large contrast between what he is doing and who he is, or at least how he thinks of himself as a person. So he used to be a gentleman, but now he's about to commit, well, destruction, felony of property. And so that really sets the scene. He is a very hypocritical man, but he's a very flawed person. But you know why he's doing this. That's why you like him, and that's why he's somebody you can understand. Now, that aside, let's talk about what he did. So far into the book, about a fifth into the fourth book, we see that Basia has just in the first 120 pages, Basia just blew up that platform. But in doing so, he sent the ship that was landing there careening off into the atmosphere because of the explosion itself. And when the ship had to crash land somewhere else, 12 people died. He killed 12 people because he detonated the bomb on the platform way too soon. And after that, what Basia continues to do is that when the science team finally comes back to their settlement on Ilis, they're just trying to do normal science stuff. Nothing hostile has been performed, and they just hate them. Every single opportunity he has, he's going to be annoying, and he's going to take back, and he's going to try and accuse the science team, who has done nothing so far except for literally dying, of trying to take away their home. They're trying to paint themselves as victims. And with this mentality, he tries to justify his further actions. And what that does was that there was a security team with the science team, and turns out one of the scientists discovered that Basia still had a few bombs, alongside with his compatriots, still had a few bombs hidden in this settlement, in this ruined fort outside of their settlement. And that's what he does. The security team tries to go up and confront them, but before they can say anything, and once they just arrive in the fort, Basie and his compatriots kill them all in cold blood, and that's 8 more people. So Basie so far has single-handedly killed 20 people because of his so-called victim mentality. So that's the characterization that we have of Basie so far. He is a guy who thinks of himself as a victim. He used to be a gentle person, but for the greater good, for protecting himself and his family, he has killed 20 people in cold blood, people who has done nothing wrong and are innocent. He has killed 20 people for no reason. That's the victim here, guys. That's the victim. So, yeah, Basia is a very complicated and very flawed person. On one hand, you see him committing all these terrible atrocities, but on the other, you see him feeling conflicted about his character. Now, I'm not saying that anything he does is right. No. I'm saying that Basia is written in a way that shows that he's feeling guilt and remorse. So you kind of understand what's happening, right? He's not a crazy cuckoo's villain who's like, oh, we must kill all the people because they're all bad. No. He's human and realizes that he's doing something wrong. But of course, he's still going to do it because that urge to protect himself and his family is too strong for him to realize that what he's doing is actually wrong. Now, these people aren't that bad. So yeah. Apologies. In that one scene where he kills the security team, a very strange device, a very good and interesting device is actually employed. That was the time skip. In it, time dilation occurs, in the sense that in his mind, everything is slowed down. He enters into a dreamlike stance, and what that allows us, the readers, to feel is that we get to see things from Basia's perspective. So he sees all the security team getting shot at and just getting their heads chopped off by a bunch of crazy people. Those are his colleagues, by the way. And the entire scene basically gives a feeling of numbness, that Basia does not know what he's doing. He doesn't understand why he's doing this, and he is just tired. He is so shocked and confused about what is happening that he just loses his grip on reality. And you can see his conflicting opinions on this. He doesn't exactly entirely know. He can't entirely confirm to himself that what he's doing is actually wrong. He hasn't reached that stage yet, but he's starting to realize that something about this is not right. That scene actually doesn't show, because subtle hints in the prose does actually show previously that, okay, yeah, he thinks he's wrong. He's kind of not right. That's the right term. But in this scene, it exemplifies his inner conflict. He's starting to realize that something is not right. That's where the thing comes into play. So it really does that by displaying that numbness, that inner conflict inside of him, that's not sure what to do, that's not sure of himself anymore. That's what's so good about Basia's characterization. So in a lot of sense, he really does fulfill the tragic hero trope. That's Basia. He's a guy who's trying to do the right thing, but obviously does it very wrong, and by no metric of the term is he actually right. And again, the authors did a great job with portraying him as an understandable and nuanced character. So he's doing all this bad stuff, but at the same time, he's human enough to realize that, okay, something is kind of not right here. And he's going through, because we're only a fifth into this book, right? So we are still in the process of going on this journey with him to see that he's a bit wrong, and much too extreme. He killed 20 people for no good reason. So that's actually the characterization of Basia. At the same time, what this leads into, and that's very peculiar, is the theme of, well, not a traditional theme, but what this does is that the authors are trying to have a conversation about extremism. What's good? About extremism, and how or whether or not that's justified. Because obviously, from what I've said about Basia, the authors know that killing people is wrong. So on the surface, it seems like, the authors are denouncing extremism, right? That, killing people to protect yourselves, that's wrong. Well, think about it. So Basia is in reality a refugee. The reason he went on Islus is because he's trying to escape the terrors of war and conflict inside the solar system by the three governing parties. And Islus is basically a new home. And so technically nobody has this control over it yet. So they come here and they take it. I think what the authors are trying to say is, well, again, it's not entirely whole right now. This is just my thoughts on what we've seen so far. The authors do think that as refugees, they need a home, and that Islus, to a certain extent, should be theirs. There's another character called Caroline, and in this book, she is basically the leader of the early human settlements, like the refugees. She's the leader of them. She is not a colleague or a compatriot of Basia, but she protects all of the settlers, all of the early settlers. And one thing that has really made me think was that her saying that this planet is not owned by them, the science team. It's not owned by the science team. They have no right here. The UN, the Mars Democratic Republican, I forgot its name. Mars and OP does not have any say to this, and that really makes me think, because that's honestly the author's stance so far, it seems. They're liberals. They are American liberals. So they tend to support refugees, they tend to support free healthcare, that type of stuff. Not that it's any direct parallels to here, but the part about refugees and allowing other immigrants to come in freely, that's one mentality that is being shown here. So obviously, the extremity is bad, but maybe, I think what the author is just trying to have us think is, okay, is this actually wrong? If they did everything safely, if they just went to a new planet that nobody was on, and they took it for themselves to protect themselves as refugees, is that right? And I think the answer that the authors are trying to say is, yeah, it kind of is. Let's just leave them be, and this is about their own home. And so yeah, this is at least the first part of my analysis on the first fifth of Cibola Burn, fourth book of The Expanse. So I've gone through the characterization, and it seems like the themes this time, and we'll talk more about the other characters next time once I've read more and I've had more time. Yeah, so yeah, this is the first part. This is a great book. If you want to read it, you should. I've spoiled a bunch, but if you actually want to read it, then it doesn't matter. There's a study that said that spoilers for literature actually tends to heighten your enjoyment of it, so please read it if you actually want to. So yeah, have fun.